welcome. It's the not Jack. I did that last time. Dan and Jers podcast. We're going to need to have a new name for this podcast. So Dan and Jers podcast works, but we'll have to come up with a nice standard name. Let me turn this light off. I can tell it's in some people's view. Boom.
Oh, thank God.
Thank you. Yeah, that was bothering me last time. I didn't realize it, like how bad it was, but now we're good. So welcome back. This is episode 2. We've done a pilot episode. We did an episode 1, and now we're on episode 2. This podcast, a little bit about spirituality, a little bit about microdosing, a little bit about creativity. So last week we talked about how music involves spirituality, how they relate. So this week I want to talk a little bit, I guess, into best practices of like microdosing. So microdosing is something that I recently got into. I've tried it before. I've heard about it maybe like a few years ago at the very least. And then like the last year, I started hearing a bit more about it. I feel like pandemic really brought out a lot of like hobbies in people, and maybe that's what brought it out a bit. So started, I'd say about 6 months getting into it fairly routinely, and been kind of going gung-ho at it ever since. Been really enjoying it. So one of the hardest parts in the beginning was finding like good information. A lot of the information varies. A lot of it's comes from just people, because there's not like scientific information on it, because it's like illegal to study, or it has been, or it's been taboo for a while. So it's been hard to do that. The person I kind of refer to usually is Paul Stamets. He's like the OG of mushrooms, I feel, not just microdose mushrooms, all mushrooms. So like one thing I do is I make sure I have at least 2 days off a week, or I'll like take it one day and then I'll take 2 days off. I'll take it on the third day. So that's one practice that's worked for me. I definitely have heard other people who take it more frequently. They take just like less on those 2 off days or whatever. I've heard people who take it just like once a week even. I've heard all different types of things. So I want to hear, I guess, from you, Dan. What do you think about best practices? How did you, if you microdose, I'm not going to assume you do, but if you microdose, how would you come up with what the best practices are? How do you do it?
Well, I do. And I mean, again, this is something that varies person to person. So it's interesting because I shared the anecdote last week about this is something I wanted to expand on. We ran out of time. But I shared that anecdote with my dad and his experience and things of that nature. And I posed the question, and this never got to get answered, like microdosing, I guess generally speaking, when you're looking at the science, it's supposed to be an experience that's sub-perceptual when you're looking at it, normally less than 0.3 grams in my mind. And a lot of people, I think, consider kind of like around 0.5 and under. I think a lot of people's microdoses are more a little bit like a very minute trip. You know what I mean? It's crossing the threshold from sub-perceptual to almost perceptual. And I think it's interesting because, I mean, this is going to get kind of philosophical too, because it's like, how do you define someone else's perception? You know what I mean?
Philosophical shit.
Yeah, so I think that's something that I found very interesting. I mean, I guess there is like a tolerance type of thing, or maybe it's just each person's biochemistry. But like, I've definitely seen some people, whether or not they're experienced mushroom like takers, I've seen some people definitely notice the microdose, especially in the beginning. I think if they're not, they've never taken it before. And then I've also noticed other people who have taken like, maybe 2 microdoses and barely felt anything or nothing at all still. So I find that interesting. I mean, your perception is your reality. So obviously everyone's already having different perceptions and feeling things, different biochemistry, different metabolism and stuff. So, I mean, for me personally, I'm someone with a very high metabolism. I'm someone who's like hypersensitive to anything I put in my body. So I take 1, which is about 0.2 or so.
0.1 and 0.2, yeah.
Yeah, so I take about 0.15, 0.2, and for me, when it's sub-perceptual in the instance of feeling. There's no visuals, there's nothing like that, but it's just a very minute background. It's like when you go outside and it's a sunny day versus a cloudy day, and it just puts a smile on your face. And it's like that sunny day is an internal thing for the whole day. So like that's a good way that I could put it, but I do find that interesting.
Right there for a second. I like that a lot. I definitely agree. I kind of want to like clarify something a little, because I feel like some people might hear that and be like, oh, it's always going to be sunny if I take microdoses. I feel like when I take microdose, When it's sunny, I super appreciate it sunny, like literally sunny, not like the
Right.
making an example or whatever, but literally sunny. I'm like, oh, this is awesome. When it's rainy, I basically might not be as happy as when it's sunny, but I'm still like appreciative of it, or I find appreciation in the rain. Let's say I'm like, oh, we need rain because it's raining the plants, or it cooled off because it was so hot. So to relate that to, let's say, like emotions, when you take a microdose, you're not always going to be so giddy inside. I don't think it helps you get giddy. Sometimes I get giddy. I'm like, oh, I'm feeling so happy, but sometimes for me, helps me deal with the not so good days. Let's say I broke up with someone in a relationship. That's not a happy feeling. A microdose isn't going to just make me happy, but it'll help me to like cope with it, to figure out, to learn from it, and to move forward from it. So it doesn't just make everything happy per se, in my opinion, but it makes you able to deal with the happy and the unhappy.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point to note. And I never want to sound like biased or painting too positive of a picture. That was just the first analogy that went to my head. But no, you're totally right in the essence of, like, that's a better way to put it, of it just brings you more into the present with whatever type of day it is. You know what I mean? Like, I just used the example of a sunny day because normally I wake up, see a sunny day, and it makes me feel more present that day and makes me want to be more mindful of what my time allocation and stuff. But yeah, no, that is a perfect way to put it. I mean, it just brings you further into the now and allows you to immerse yourself in whatever it may be. Like you've touched on too, I've also taken it on days where I'm not in the best, or I'm not super jazzed, or there might be some background things, and it actually brings me a lot of clarity, helps you work through it and stuff. So yeah, that's a very important point to know. I agree with.
Definitely. And then something else you kind of mentioned was like the biochemistry of a person, like that could change the effect. So I've actually heard some people, I don't think you'd realize it as much with microdosing, but some people who've tried to like trip on mushrooms take like a 3 grams and nothing happens. So there's definitely some people where your body reacts a different way. And I'm curious, I feel like there's not enough studies on it, if they still have some benefits from that, they just don't have the trippy feeling, or if they're literally like not feeling anything. I've also heard of like different, I think drugs for narcolepsy or maybe like seizures. Someone said they're on those types of drugs and they don't really feel the mushrooms anymore. I don't know if it's those drugs or if it's a coincidence. Like some people just don't really have feel the effect. It's interesting.
Well, I do know, I don't know about like narcolepsy and shit, those types of drugs, but I do know there is interactions with psychedelics and SSRIs. So that is one thing that is also, I think, something people should be more wary about or do a lot more research. I think at the level of microdosing,
what's an SSRI?
An SSRI is like antidepressants, like Prozac, like any antidepressant that is, prescribed or whatever. I don't know if it's the same for psilocybin. I know for LSD, though, there can be negative interactions with SSRIs and, psychedelic, like in LSD, at least. I don't know if that follows over to psilocybin, but I do think that when you're on SSRIs, it would either, like you said, just kind of numb the experience, or it could actually have potential negative interactions in your brain because one is sort of suppressing something and the other is sort of, turning it on. So it's kind of like an internal tug of war. That's something I don't have enough research on personally, but I do think something to be mindful about if that applies to, a certain person.
That's really interesting because I've seen a post on, I think, Facebook about a guy who's on SSRIs and there's like a scientific experiment of the effects or the relationship. And I didn't really even read much into it. I didn't know what an SSRI even was, but it's interesting that you brought that up again. I kind of like when I find it so interesting when something comes up and then it comes up again within a couple of days. You're like, there's, I think, a reason I keep on seeing this.
Yeah, I mean, that definitely could be, like I'm saying, it could be something that's very important. Like if someone is going into the experience thinking they're going to be more grounded and present or whatever, and then it turns out to be the opposite, that could definitely be negative. So yeah, I think that's something that I know there's more anecdotal evidence of like LSD microdosing because I think people have just been doing that longer or just whatever. There's been more kind of, anecdotal studies of people doing it on themselves. So I definitely have heard about that stuff with LSD, but not sure what the interactions with psilocybin. I do know that if people like that were on SSRIs, I've heard things about like microdosing or, you know, even tripping helping. Like once people have waned off and they're not on the SSRIs, I've heard people say it's like comparable or even more, it does more for them than the SSRIs did. That's also, again, I don't want to make broad generalizations. That's just a few anecdotal things I've heard from people who have had experiences like that. So,
of course, a good little time to, I guess, give a warning to people. I'm not a doctor. I don't think Danny's a doctor. None of this is advice. None of this is like guaranteed or whatever. Everyone should take responsibility for themselves. Do your own research always. This is just like what we've heard, what we think might be important. I like all of that. I guess one of the last things I want to touch upon is so microdosing, I feel like, has helped me personally, probably with some like addiction issues. I definitely have like addictive tendencies, so I think I'm a little bit more in control with the microdosing. Definitely some like depressive thoughts, anxious thoughts, gives me some energy. Actually helps me, I feel like, not eat as much. I feel like that upset stomach feeling, some people get an upset stomach from it, some people don't. I get a little bit of an upset stomach, but I kind of like it because I don't eat. Makes me not eat as much, where if I didn't have the upset stomach, I might be like munching on stuff. So
college girls are going to hear this and lose their mind. What?
Yeah, exactly. So I kind of like that, but so it's helped literally a number of things. And then from what I've read, it kind of feels like the Jack Herer book about cannabis, the Prince Wears No Clothes or whatever that book is, where he basically says like cannabis can do everything. It can, like, you can make clothes from it, you can make energy from it, you can make gas from it, you can make food from it, you can do this. Mushrooms kind of feel like that too. Like you can actually like fix toxic like lands with it. You can eat it. You can make leather out of it. There's actually leather alternatives I just started hearing about. Whatever. But and then all the benefits for like the individual goes on and on. Again, though, it's pretty new. There's not too much research, so it's hard to know exactly what it helps or how it's going to help you. So one of, I think, the most important things, though, for taking it is kind of to set an intention. And this is completely me. I'm kind of like making this up a little bit, but it makes sense to me. It's like set an intention and let the mushrooms manifest the intention. Where you can manifest your intentions without mushrooms, but I feel like the mushrooms really help you, guide you exactly where you to go.
Ooh, yep.
But when you don't have an intention, you might get lost. And I feel like some people like say, "Oh, I was thinking way too much about this," and in my head, I don't know. It's not my like role, but it's like, what was your intention, or did you have an intention, or are you letting the mushrooms just go wild with you? And I feel like some of them, maybe the mushrooms are solving things that they didn't even really know they were needing to be solved. And that could be maybe subsided a little bit by like, hey, set an intention and then listen and it'll guide you. But I feel like setting an intention is super useful because another little tidbit that I like is like the mushrooms don't heal you. That mushrooms do not heal you. They guide you to how you can be healed. And I think there's a huge distinction with that some people need to like realize.
That is really, really huge. I know, like, intention, and what you said, intention is just, even if you're completely sober, setting intentions in your day. If you wake up and you just start moving around without thinking, I mean, it's going to be kind of a chaotic day. Things might spring up that you're not expecting and stuff. So I couldn't agree more with the setting the intention. And when we're talking about how they're a substance that kind of bring you into the now, the more intention you have once you're in that state, then like you said, it's just more ability to manifest. I know we're running out of time. Just a quick anecdote to relate to what you said. I was explaining, we were talking about dosing and stuff. The whole time, the 3 months I've been microdosing, I've exclusively, I've only done one. I've taken one, which is like a 0.2 or whatever, and I wait 3 days every time in between, and there's been no exceptions. The whole time I've done it like a very strict experiment. So for the first time last week, I had it was a sunny day. I didn't have an agenda, and my intention was to go and wander. The intention was to have no intention, which is also, you can set that sometimes. So I just immersed myself, was out walking in nature, having a great time, just, meditating by the stream, sitting on a rock on the river. And I felt really, when I took 2, it was crossing the barrier of being slightly perceptual, and I felt so attuned with nature and was just, really feeling myself. It was one of the days last week that I wasn't going to work out because I'd worked out like 4 days in a row. I was like, let me just walk and like stretch my body, but not go too intense. So I did 3 rounds of Wim Hof breathing on this rock on the river, and I just felt compelled to start doing handstands. Like, I don't know what it was, but I started doing handstands on this rock. And it was this weird kind of gamble, like this mischievous feeling where I'm like, if I fall, I'm going straight into that water right now. But there was also this level of like, I trust myself, and I don't, if I get wet, what's going to happen? You know what I mean? Like, there's water all around. You're going to be fine. So I put up a clip on my Insta, I think you saw it, of me doing like a handstand on this rock. And some girl messaged me and was like, wow, like that's crazy or whatever. Just maybe a clapping reaction or something like that. And then I just casually wanted to throw in, because this girl's like kind of like a hippie chick, and I haven't talked to her very much, and she's kind of cute, you know what I mean? So I just threw it out there. I was like, yeah, my microdose had me feeling myself. And she replied, and she was like, nah, more like your superpowers had you feeling yourself. And I was like, it was funny because I was trying to kind of give credit to the mushrooms when, like you said earlier, it's not the mushrooms. They're just the facilitator that brought me there. It all lies within yourself, and it's all what you do with it. So this girl was like, nah, that's your superpowers. And I kind of was like, not being self-deprecating, and I was like, I don't know if I'd be doing handstands today if it wasn't for them though. And then she kind of checked me, and I loved that this interaction happened because, like I said, I never want to paint too biased of a picture. She messaged me and was like, well, you should be able to get to that state of mind without the mushrooms, you know what I mean? Or she's like, you should be able to tap into that frequency of mind without the mushrooms. And I was like, I honestly couldn't agree with you more, and I'm really glad you said that. I was sort of just making a joke out of it, but she kind of checked me. And the thing is they really are, you know what I mean? Like the way I've explained it to people too is it's not the mushrooms themselves, is they, like you said, they're facilitators. All these positive changes since I started, most of it comes from the work I've done. It's just they kind of led me there. Like now, since I started microdosing, I was more mindful of my breath. And then I realized, maybe I should look up more breath work. And now I do breath work every day, and it's a part of my thing. And it's so at first it's like the mushrooms kind of guide you, but then now I've done this for more than 21 days, a habit forms. So indirectly they got me to this new habit, but now this habit, it's like it has legs of its own now. You know what I mean? It doesn't rely on that. So that's something that I think has been super, super powerful to me. Now I do cold plunges. Now I do breath work. Now I meditate every day. I didn't do any of these things before. So, or I would do them very few and far between, just on the days I was having a bad day. Now I realized, if I do this every day, I consistently feel good. And I'm really glad that I got led there from the mushrooms. But at the same time, there's off, like you said, there's 3 off days, so I could just not do those. That's how you know it's not due to the mushrooms. I'm still doing the things on the off days, and it's still, bringing positive change into my life. So yeah, that was my anecdote to relate to what you said, and I think that's a really important point.
I love that, and I have to wrap this up, but that brought me or reminded me of another little thing, so I got to talk for one more minute before we wrap up. But so similarly, or like that definitely reminded me, if you've heard of Ram Dass, hopefully a lot of us have heard of Ram Dass. If you haven't, he died a few years ago, but he's like a spiritual OG. Basically did work with actually like Timothy Leary at like Harvard, was a big part of the counterculture in 70s, and became like just like a really happy guy. Like people just look to him for spiritual guidance. He's like a guru or whatever you would say at that point. But he used to trip on LSD a lot. I don't know if it's microdosing or if he tripped. And he basically went to India and met like his like teacher or whatever. And they meditated, this, that, and whatever. I might be butchering the story a little bit, but you'll get the main idea. You guys can look it up your own. One day, his teacher said, "You don't need to trip anymore." And Ram Dass was like, "I didn't even tell you I was tripping. Like, how did you know that?" And the guy was like, "I can feel it. Like, I can tell there's an energy about you that is like reliant on the LSD or something." And basically said, "You don't need that. You can get those feelings without the LSD." And that was the last time Ram Dass ever took LSD. So I feel like that's similar to like kind of what you're saying, is like it might guide you to where you need to be. It definitely taught Ram Dass a lot from doing LSD, but when you hit a certain point, you realize that like you're the one who can kind of have these superpowers and be a superhero. It's not the mushrooms. They just help you.
Perfectly put. Couldn't agree more.
Awesome. Great episode. Love you guys. I had fun. I'm microdosing, so maybe that's why I'm so happy. But no, I'm kidding. Love you. Love you, Dan. Oh, there we go. Yep. Yes, sir.
Shout out our sponsors.
Like, subscribe. We haven't even really posted much, haven't really promoted much, but we will soon. So if you are seeing this, you're probably actually one of the lucky people that we just sent it to. Please comment. Let us know what you want to hear about. Let us know if you want to try microdosing. We might lead you to the right way. We're sponsored by Mushmore. They can send you a 3-month trial if you haven't gotten one yet. And expect to hear from us probably like Tuesdays. We're going to be recording on Mondays, and we'll be hopefully posting by Tuesdays. So check our YouTube whenever, weekly Tuesdays, and see us for new content. Thank you for everything. Danny, I'll see you soon. Check out Danny Camp on Spotify, anywhere you download music. One love. Peace.